What's up, everyone, and welcome to the MPC podcast. My name is Toyosi, and I'm going to be your host for the day. Super excited to have on the show with me the legendary Carmen Rico, founder of Coco VC. Hey, Carmen, welcome to the show.
I must confess, I have never been called legendary, and I'm not sure how I feel about it because I'm really old.
Legendary is a good thing. So we're just going to have fun
Let's
and enjoy a very fruitful conversation.
exactly. Let's have legendary fun.
There you go. Carmen and I are going to be talking about a whole number of things from her path to becoming an investor to her passion for marketplaces. And most importantly, some of the things that she looks for in marketplaces as an early stage investor. Welcome again, Carmen. I'd love if you can do a quick intro to yourself. You've had quite a journey from politics to angel investing and then VC, and now back to angel investing, but now as a founder of an angel fund. So tell us a little bit about your journey to get to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Very happy to be here and share a little bit my journey. As you mentioned, definitely not a straight line. And actually, that's a good thing. Just for all of the people who worry that they are not sure they're on the right path, there is a great Nobel Prize winner that actually started in physics very, very late. He was 28, and he was told that he will never make it. He was too old. And then he got the Nobel Prize when he was like in his 70s. But he actually said that some of us are turtles and don't have it all figured out at the age of like 25. And you need to draw on a lot of different experiences to actually see the full picture and understand where you're going. And I think this suits me very well in my process, all the way from politics to angel investing, right? Took a lot of experiences to realize what my passion was, what my superpower was, and also
Mhm.
where there was market opportunity. But let me start by the beginning. As you mentioned, I started my career in politics and in Spain when our risk premium was at 500 basis points, which based middle of the debt crisis, which meant we had the like black men at the door every day. And there's lots of reforms in education, lots of reforms in healthcare, as there was a very unique time to be there. But I stayed there for 2 years. I was an economic advisor to the president of one of Spain's autonomous regions. And I left to go serve my time at Morgan Stanley and go straight from being like quite young in experience, but senior in politics, because these things happen in politics sometimes, to be at the bottom of the food chain. And to be honest, I came to London this was like 9 years ago. Best thing I've ever done. Met my favorite people, learned so much, and super grateful for that. So I stayed 3 years there. And I was actually moving to New York with Morgan Stanley when Guzman, who was the only other Spaniard in DC back then, he was an index, introduced me to Antoine and Felix. And
Okay.
Antoine and Frederick were just starting Felix. And Antoine gave me my first shot in investing, and I'll be forever grateful to him for that. I wouldn't be here if he wouldn't have believed in me, and I knew nothing about technology. What I knew though was I had this urge to be in an industry that I felt was at the forefront of growth and progress, and that was my main issue with banking. I felt it was a little bit more in decline, and I wanted to be at the forefront of like progress, and he gave me my first shot. So started at Felix, this was 6.5 years ago. Felix, for those of you who don't know, is a fund doing a lot around consumer and commerce enablers, both in Europe and in the US. Then I left Felix to launch a Spanish seed fund into the UK called Samaripan. He was focused on B2B and B2C marketplaces and network effects. And so if you take those two theses, the consumer and commerce enablers and the network effects aside, I started to develop my own thesis, which I call the insane customer love. Customer love can be found both in B2B and B2C, and it can be measured differently across different stages of the company. But the fundamental idea is that if your users, your customers, love your product so much that they gather around it, they build a community, they interact through this, the time bringing each other on board, that is actually a super strong driver for organic growth and a very high bar of entry. So what I like is that on top of an emotional connection almost with the product and the experience, you can build a highly scalable and defensible business. And so that has taken me to invest all the way from direct to consumer brands to DevOps and open source. I just basically look for excruciating pain points that people can't live with, and then solutions they cannot live without. And that's how I look at businesses. So That's me from an investment piece. Now, as you said, I'm the founder of Cocoa. Cocoa, we like to say we're B-sister angels. And so that you understand a little bit what that means, let take you through my journey. But basically, the first kind of aha moment that leads me to Cocoa was summer 2019. I made my first angel investment. I was a partner in something like that, but this company was out of scope for them. So I made my first angel investment into a company called Hopin. So I put together 100% of Hopin's proceeds all the way from seed capital to my family. But what's interesting is that it was my first angel investment. I wanted to help Johnny, and I helped him with the tools that I had, which were the tools of ABC. I introduced him to my network. I helped him with the deck. I reviewed his search, got him a lawyer, build the actual spreadsheet of the cap table. All these things that for me as a VC were bread and butter, but that were not. And by doing that, what I realized was that I was building a very unique relationship with Johnny, a relationship like peer to peer and almost like trusted confidant. And I really, really liked that relationship. So I started to do a lot of angel investment while I was a partner in a Series A bank called Blossom. And there, on the winter lockdown in Barcelona with my longtime friend Anthony, who was also doing angel investing, and he was on a growth fund. We started like discussing this different view of the market, which is like when you're a lead investor, you're a bit more stake driven, it is competitive. There's collaborating with other investors, not competing, and building this very unique relationship of trusting founders. And so we came up with the opportunity for Cocoa. And as a value proposition to founders, we're V-Sister Angels. This means we invest angel checks 200 to 500K. Point being, no friction allocation. We do not compete with other investors. We collaborate. We don't create headaches for the founders. Allocation. We come in small, small so that we can be neutral, independent, agnostic like an angel. But to that position of small check, small stake, we bring on our VC network and our VC expertise. So we become the in-house VC for founders, and we
Very cool.
the system with like independent investor insight. So that's us. And we raise a very small fund, 75% backed by tech founders. We have 20 founders of unicorns and decacorns. No,
Nice.
because we want to just
Neutral. You got to be neutral.
exactly. And it's called cocoa because cocoa is this of chocolate. And from the stiff, like proteins to chocolate bar, you have many stages, like with the life of a startup. And do not get me started about chocolate making. Yeah, that's basically me and all my like very curvy lines to get to today.
Awesome. Sounds super interesting. I mean, for what it's worth, I read the article on Cocoa and I was super fascinated. I was like, yes, this is actually needed in the current ecosystem that we have in Europe and beyond. Anyway, segueing a little bit. So you've been an investor at Semipata, and you've backed companies like Hopin, SideQuest, and so on. You clearly seem to like the platform business or that kind of business model. What about this model is particularly appealing to you?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I agree. I sort of expanded my thesis a little bit, but the core of it is this idea of the power of the community. And I think that there are many things to like in platform businesses, but the main one that kind of gives me comfort, so to say, and excites me is the defensibility as a main driver of long-term value. You think about like effects. What are network effects? Network effects, many ways to like define them and classify them. But the idea is that when a new user joins, it increases the value that the service or the product provides to new and existing users. If you take that together with the power of the brand, the community, they bring very high switching costs.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can create incredibly long-term defensible businesses. If you think about it, like SideQuest, for example, SideQuest started around 3 years ago because there was not enough content in the Quest store, and also because developers were not managing to get their games in users' hands. And today, it's the largest VR community and content library in the world. They have almost 2.5 million monthly active users. Every VR developer in the world is on that platform. It was all organic. And so,
Nice.
one, there is this community that grows on itself, like organic, because you're a developer, you share your game, I use it, I share with a friend who comes on the platform, knows a developer. Like this concept of that virality is very interesting. But more than that, what do you need to do to now create an alternative to Cypress? And like it's network effects and the power of a brand at scale. And that is powerful and so defensible. That's basically, I think, what I love about that.
Super interesting. I mean, by the way, this is education for me as well, and I'm a marketplace investor. So we've spoken a little bit about, why you like marketplaces. How many have you done to date? And what is one of your more, I guess, recent ones that you're excited about and why?
Yeah.
Assuming that you can disclose that information, of course.
Again, like, still very old because I've invested in too many. But it's an interesting question. I'm gonna respond being a little bit more abstract so that we understand the different journeys that can lead you to building marketplaces. My first kind of lead investment into a marketplace was into a company called Crowd Justice, which was basically a crowdfunding marketplace for legal cases. So for people who don't know
Okay.
legal cases, it was almost like a just giving where you would organize donations, but
Got
um,
it.
that company is now called Legal, Legl, and it went
Okay.
a B2B SaaS for the business operation part of law firms. So what happened here was that the founder, who's machine, Julia, she realized that the true value that Crown Justice was providing law firms with money that had KYC and AML. Basically, law firms have restrictions in where they get their money from, and here through the platform, it was all like clean and stuff. And then from there, she started on expanding into SaaS services for law firms. And now, like, it's an amazing business that just announced their $18 Series B. So interesting.
Nice.
That's their marketplace going into B2B SaaS. Then I've also invested into SaaS businesses that then became marketplaces,
Yeah.
SaaS-enabled marketplaces. So not disclosing the name because it's not public, but one of our latest investments is building the operating system for fleet management. So what they're doing today is a SaaS for fleet management for the likes of GoPuff, even Royal Mail, because they are getting increasing number of electric vehicles, but those electric vehicles actually break a lot. So to manage that is an absolute pain because you need to locate the vehicle, put a ticket, get repaired, claim the insurance. And when this happens very frequently, it's a mess on Excel. Now, this is even more important in these models of last mile delivery. You need scale to get to unit economics that make sense. And to
Mhm.
reach scale, you need a large fleet, but that fleet has a lot of overhead. So trying to solve that with just a simple SaaS workflow tool to manage it. Now, you can imagine that if you're, let's say, the Go Bucket, your gorillas, and you're using a SaaS to manage internally all your electric vehicle fleet, you would love your service providers of these vehicles to be on that platform as well, because that way you can just communicate straight with them on the platform, right? So you bring on the service providers. And once you bring on the service providers, they can bring on their fleet. Then we have a marketplace and we can start transacting on these vehicles. But wait, what if it's not just vehicles and also the insurance people come in and the repair people come in? And now it's not just you, me, go after your gorillas, you, the guy who I run the vehicles from, transact. It's also that the insurance guy transacts with me, but also with you and the repair. And you have what market network, which is kind of a bit of a bust than the fund NFX came up with, but that makes a lot of sense, which is when the different parties interact, not just on one, but also with each other. And so it's interesting, right? How you can go from a marketplace to a SaaS and from a SaaS to a marketplace.
To a marketplace. Nice. Very nice. I mean, we, as you know, at Speed Invest love marketplaces and platforms, which is why we're having this interview in the first place. Very shameless plug. If you haven't heard already, you should come to the Marketplace Conference in a couple of weeks. On the 11th of October, Carmen's going to be there. So you can hear much more about this. But going back into the interview, let's shift gears a little bit and go deeper about marketplaces and network effects. So what are the main criteria and KPIs that you look at when you're evaluating a marketplace as an early stage investor, obviously?
Yeah, like very good question. And the framework is, I think there is always the theory that for a market to be disrupted with a marketplace, there needs to be a lot of fragmentation. That is of supply and or demand. Preferably, I look a lot at liquidity, which is always the efficiency at which the platform matches supply and demand. That's very important. And it also gives an indication of the depth of the market, which is relevant. Third, and this is one that I am pretty obsessed about because it gets typically overlooked, and it's the share wallet. which is what part of the business of each side are you capturing? So how much of the spending, the relevant spending to you, to the product that you're providing, but the relevant spending of the buyer and the relevant earnings or revenue of the seller are you actually managing to capture? And last but not least, and we've spoke about that now, is like network effects and defensibility. And I think there are many ways to actually, these are very hard things to measure, especially at very early stage. And there are two silly metrics that we can list. But I think if I had to choose one, and this is also for founders to know that they need to focus on, if I had to choose one KPI or one metric that I could ask founders for, it would be the share of wallet one and the cohort. So I said two. Which show me the growth and the engagement and the retention. Actually, wallet, which puts it into perspective. Because when you think about it, that's one of the main challenges I see in marketplaces, especially in the B2B side. And I think that we can all agree that there is a massive opportunity in B2B marketplaces. It's like
100%.
trillions in spending, and like it's so underpenetrated by tech and so many times suited for a marketplaces because it's so fragmented and so many intermediaries and no transparency. But the reality is that B2B transactions are very large,
Mhm.
require a lot of trust, and are based on very long-standing human.
Relationships, 100%.
This has been one of my biggest learnings. Is just like we as VCs in our tech mindset of founder times as well, we just think that the world runs optimized and like efficient as we do everything in our lives. And big surprise, actually, some people like to wait 3 weeks for our food. And
Yeah.
they love to go out for lunch with the guy they would rather than just interacting over Slack, right? Like, and I think that that's what share of wallet measures your ability as a marketplace to actually capture a significant part of the business of your users. Because what is a huge risk in marketplaces is to become a solution for corner cases, right?
Yes.
And that and the issue with this, and why I'm saying it so vehemently so people watch out, is that you realize late or so you at the beginning launch this marketplace and you're growing. Of course you're growing because you're acquiring new customers every time.
Hmm.
But when you reach a certain scale and your growth slows, you look back at your business and your customers and you're like, oh, they're only giving me like 5% or 10% of the deliveries. Oh, they're only giving me 10% of the orders out of the 100% that they could give me given my product or my service. And it's like, oh, shoot, because
Yeah.
I need to grow deeper into each of these customers to continue scaling. And in extreme cases, actually, oh, shoot, I was full. I thought I had product market fit. But when I capture 5% of the business, relevant
Then
business,
clearly I don't.
I
Yeah.
don't have product market fit. And I've just spent like millions in growth because I thought I had product market fit and I was just like scaling. And so it's how do you make sure that you're not a solution for corner cases, that you are this main solution. And
You're at 4. Yeah.
it's very hard because it's very hard to break human habits and human behaviors. And some people just like inefficient processes. And I think that that's a reality check, one, and two, obsessive monitoring. And how do you monitor the share wallet? So tough because at very early age, you need to ask your customers. Like you don't know how much, of course, they literally got your SaaS, so you manage all their bookings, so you know how much.
Of
And you're,
course.
it gets so overlooked because we get so fixated into like the liquidity, which is obviously key and a must, but like it's almost like it's a necessary condition, but not a sufficient one. And to scale, you need share of wallet, and that is a big challenge in the market.
Cool. So that's a little bit on the challenges, and you've kind of segued into my next question ish. You basically touched on B2B marketplaces, the huge opportunities that there are there. One of my next questions was, where do you think the biggest opportunities lie? So let's even assume that you've answered some of that, but I'll go to the second part of the question. What trends do you find the most interesting that you're observing in marketplaces now?
I think it's the untapping of these kind of big B2B pools that are almost untouched, right? Like not there in many cases, but we're seeing like a lot in like what supply chain, even chemicals, construction, like,
Mhm.
and these are gonna be hard, right? This is gonna be hard to do, but at the same time, it's huge. And I'm interested in that because I think that consumer marketplaces, of course, there's still like lots of for a community organic place, but the challenge I'm seeing is it's already very saturated. And like, if you want to build a new way, like, like an iteration of something, it's much more complicated to do something special. And more than that, if you need to acquire either like supply or demand in consumer, it's very difficult these days. I struggle a little bit with that. I think either you have a clear edge in distribution that almost subsidizes your cost of acquisition. And this can be, it happens with influencers, sometimes it happens with brands, with communities. So, except you have like a clear distribution edge that subsidizes your CAC, it's becoming very difficult with like saturation of paid channels, iOS 14 update, and well following suit. So I struggle a little bit with all that. And yeah, so I guess like a lot of untapped pools in B2B yet to be digitalized. And for that, it's like either like my advice sort of to founders is like, if you get into any of that, make sure you know the market inside out. Like you need to be an insider because the logic of each market is very different, right? I'm sure, and I know for sure because I'm an alien to my parents in how I think about stuff. So well, our industry is alien to like some manufacturing industry must look at us and be like, who are these people? And the same happens when we think about manufacturing. So you need to
100%.
be one of them to understand. So yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. So funny enough, at Speed Invest, we've done a few B2B marketplaces ourselves. And one of our thesis is that no matter who's building the B2B marketplace, you must have had experience in that particular category. Because actually, to your point about relationships, having those relationships even opens the door for them to be able to try the product in the first place. And then going from that point, you then build upon that. And actually, when you're selling it, you're not selling, oh, it's a new product. It's actually, I'm an expert in construction. I know the problems. I've done this for X number of years. I'm one of you. You guys should try this. And it's a totally different sort of go to market.
Well, my product vision is like the one of an insider. I'm not trying to think like how a technologist would solve the problem. It's like I felt the pain. I know what I wanted when I was one of them. Let me build it. And I think that
Exactly.
that is a big, big differentiation. Yes, I agree.
Awesome. Right. So I'm mindful that we're running desperately out of time. This is what happens when you're having fun, but we'll do a few closing notes and wrap up. So more on a personal level, most early stage investors have one specific criteria that kind of outweighs the rest. So some it's product, some it's KPIs, and some it's more like the team, charisma, etc. So what's yours?
And it ties up actually very well with how saying about being an insider. To me, it's founders. Like founders is my thesis. Also, we invest so early, and I love venture being a people's art. So founders. Now, what do I look for in founders? Everybody talks about founder market fit. What I look for is obsession. Like I want founders to, like, of course, know the market, have an interesting edge, but like have felt the pain and have like a real reason to solve it. Because one, it gives them, an edge into the market, but more than anything, because starting a company, like a startup, like, is irrational. And there are going to be like so many things that are going to go wrong. So many times you're going to want to give up that either you're irrationally obsessed with solving the problem, or it's very hard to see why you would endure all that pain. So so that's one. And the second one is an ambition that is borderline, but that you can and this is tricky because borderline naive and delusional is a fine line. And this I learned from Johnny at Hopin. Like before I hadn't like sort of seen it live so much, but it's this idea that I want founders to have a huge ambition, almost not being aware of how impossible it is, right? To do it, but being able to execute on it. So yeah, that's the two.
It's almost like you're in a world of your own, but then you still try and deliver on that world of your own that you're trying to create, right?
I think exactly. I think that the thing is you're not fully aware of all the challenges you're going to encounter because if you are, you might deem something impossible. And so you think everything is possible in that space. But once you face those challenges that are going to come, you're going to be able to execute them. So that's like kind of the thing. That's obsession and ambition that is borderline naive, but that you can execute on.
Cool. And what's your go-to resource, whether it's blog, book, podcast? Like, what do you sort of feed yourself on with regards to marketplaces?
So with regards to everything and also marketplaces, my
Mhm.
go-to place 100% is the Acquired podcast.
Okay.
Like I listen to it, driving, running, everything. It's basically two guys, amazing, do a lot of research and bring you to the history of the biggest tech companies in the world, all the way from TCSM, the Taiwanese semiconductor company, to SpaceX, to Walmart. And it
Cool.
was as deep from when Sam Walton, founder of Walmart, which is one I listened in the summer, was selling newspapers at university, to when he bought a 25 million like satellite network to broadcast his own team in like the 80s. So like it's just like it's amazing and it just gives you such depth into the real history, the like reasoning what happened there. It's amazing. So that's in general. There are many marketplaces there, but at least anything they publish. I'm reading an amazing book into venture and maybe more for investors, but that actually has displays novels, which I always read fiction in the evening, and now I'm reading this. It's called Empower Law.
Okay. Yep.
You really get also history about like venture and how like the very origins of venture. And that note, actually, people didn't know. I tweeted about it the other day, but venture capital comes from adventure capital. And then I think most marketplaces related and also for founders, if they want to know, there's like the customer memos. Are actually
Mhm.
the first. And there you have like Pinterest, and then you have Twitch and their reasoning behind that. That's actually a really smart resource.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carmen. So, what about case studies? So, what are the marketplace businesses who you would suggest all marketplace founders should study in detail and why?
Yeah, I think there are like too
I don't
many,
say Hopin.
of course, the first one, but so much of our private and professional life runs in marketplaces and digital platforms, right? So like most recent, you have Depop, which is huge way in Europe, like huge
Mhm.
European. You have Farfetch, obviously another great European with Hopin. So I'm getting home. Like, and then a personal favorite one, because I think the playbook was really smart, was also Open Table. And
Okay.
how a SaaS for helping restaurants manage their bookings and then became a marketplace to book. Like this dynamic of, and I guess the ultimate idea of all of this and why it's interesting to read these memos and everything is the fact that your vision or where you end up being and your
Mhm.
go to market is a complete different thing. And that some of the
Sure.
most successful companies have a go to market that you could not have envisioned them becoming what they are today. And probably the founders didn't either. They figured it out somewhere down the line, right? But you need to find that Trojan horse that gets you in a segment, solve it, like create product market fit, scale it, scale the playbook, holding, and then more opportunities will come. And you just need to like, be smart about how you manage them. And so I think I just love this idea, right? Around the like go to market versus vision and how to build on it.
So, last but not the least, if you could go back in time, what would be the one piece of advice you would give your younger self to better prepare you to being a founder slash institutional angel at Cocoa now?
This podcast destroyed me, the younger self. Okay, let me, it seems apparently I need to go back a long time to find my younger self. But basically, a really good question. I think that one of the beautiful things of being in your 30s now is that you're much more comfortable with yourself. So I would go back to the early I and be like, you know what? Focus on your superpowers. Of course, try to like, work on your weaknesses, but focus on your superpowers and be comfortable with them. Like and like build on them, right? And on that note, and personally, um, we're always raised with like the power of IQ. And I studied a lot. I got very good grades. The brain, like my IQ was such a like big part of like who I was, a condition of self-worth, so to say. And actually down the line, working with founders from Johnny to like every founder I've worked with as an angel, I realized the power of EQ and the power that lays in showing empathy and supporting founders through like being this person they can call to like celebrate that they have a term sheet and you can screenshot together when they sign. And also the people who they can call when like they have a huge fight with their co-founder. And so I will be like, whatever is your superpower, just like build on it and be comfortable, own it, like not. And then the last but not the least is have a lot of fun. Like, and the best, and it sounds like a buzzword, but the best advice, I was interviewing for Morgan Stanley, and I had Morgan Stanley JP on the same 48 hours is awful. And a friend of mine back then, older, actually told me, it's like, just go and have fun. And it was the best advice that I've ever been given. So to a point, and I'm sure something personal, that now before every single meeting, I go in front of a mirror, generally a bathroom, but I can capture. And I smile because the physical, like it creates something also in you. Like I smile and I like tell myself, like, let's go have fun. And I actually, more verbally, I take a picture for my husband because now he makes me send him a picture of the have fun. So before every meeting, I literally like smile, tell myself, let's go have fun. And it
That's what's
changes.
up.
Walk into a room with a complete different attitude. So as founders, before every pitch, and I know how draining it gets because I've also pitched for Cocoa, and I know how hard it is sometimes, they'll be like, let's have fun. Because the person in front of you is going to feel that energy.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Carmen. Guys, we're going to wrap it up there. Carmen will be at the Marketplace Conference in Berlin on the 11th of October. If you haven't already bought your tickets, head to the website, marketplaceconf.com/tickets. Hope to see you there. Carmen, thank you so much once again. I'm your host, Teosi. I'll see you guys later. Take care.